Got quite the ensemble going on out here today. Got the Craft Hypervent wind jacket first. Not a rain jacket, by the way. I am starting to feel some drops coming on here. Then on foot, I've got first of all my Creepers toe socks, purple haze color here. Trying to match up a little bit and also fill up a little bit of volume. I'm going to talk about later in the On Cloudsoma. The CloudToma is the latest trail running shoe from On, and it is something completely different here. You've probably noticed already. Where are the CloudTec Pods? On is looking to bring a bit more connection to their trail running lineup. In place of their signature CloudTec Pods, you now have CloudTec Connect. CloudTec Connect describes the system as a whole, I guess, of 14 different pods underfoot. Wait a second, can I still refer to these segments as pods? Typically in on-speak, pods refers to those compressive voids within their midsoles. On has not provided any official guidance on this new terminology here. So if you hear me say pod in the course of this review, I'm really talking about each individual segment. This is very surprisingly quite a minimal shoe from On here. They've really leaned into that connection aspect, not just related to those segments, but the upper and actually even the fit. I've got my typical US 10 EU 44 here for On. Most On shoes, I always wear a US 10 and they work quite well for me. With the exception of the Cloud Ultra 3, I intentionally ordered a US 9.5 in that shoe just to try it out. It did fit decently well with thin socks, but I did find a little lack of space in front of the toes in that US 9.5. Noticeably, their US 9.5 is listed at an EU 43. I am going to talk about the fit and sizing of this CloudToma a little bit later on in a close-up, but as I was trying it on and also as I was kind of feeling out or thinking back about my fit in other On shoes, it did kind of strike me that I do seem to fall in between at least US sizes for On with the 10 and the 9.5. So I did go and check out their website. They don't actually list an EU 43.5. If that is a regional variation, let me know, but it jumps from 9.5 EU 43 to US 10 EU 44. And just thinking it through, especially with this one and the recent Cloud Monster 3 Hyper that I tested, it did strike me that I fall probably at a precise US 9.75 if such a size did exist. That's what led me to check on the EU 43.5, which I in turn found out did not exist, at least as far as I could find. I've got the weight here at an even 9.0 ounces, 256 grams. That's about mid-range as far as trail shoe weights go. Also, the stack, similarly mid-range at 33.27 with a 6mm drop. I did manually measure 33 at the heel, so they are right on target. Very Swiss precise there with their specs. I've been mostly climbing since the start here, and the 6mm drop does feel pretty good. No tension on my lower legs and Achilles. Might be a little more comfortable with a higher drop, but 6 for sure is right in range here, keeping that connection. Feeling decently good going uphill. Definitely feels balanced for sure. I could tell already. Flats in maneuvering around. 6mm is going to be good on the trails. Midsole foam is On's premium Helion HF, which is a PVAX-based foam. They do vary the density though on their HF formulations. This is not one of the softer and bouncier formulations here. For sure, a shoe like the Cloud Ultra Pro, it's definitely gonna feel softer underfoot. That HF, more energetic, more bouncy. Even the Cloud Monster 3 Hyper, that top layer of HF, also notably softer and bouncier, more energetic than here. I get the sense in picking the foam density with the CloudToma, they didn't want to dull out the ride, make it overly bouncy. I want to keep that grounded feel, firmer type of connection to the ground. Sometimes if you're just too bouncy or too soft, especially with these flex grooves or whatever in between the segments, that can feel a little bit unnerving, especially on trails, a little bit more so, I should say, loose underfoot. I've got a little fun testing video coming up where I take the Brooks Glycerin Flex out on some dirt. Foam definitely feels softer in that one. Also, the grooves between the segments in the Brooks shoe, there's a lot space in there. Deeper grooves, just flexes a lot more than this shoe. And again, it does feel a lot looser under feel in comparison. That is a road shoe though. We're talking about pure trail shoe here, so they're definitely accounting for that in the design here. Little light showers here have softened up what typically is a very hard packed dirt road here, and it's actually making the shoe feel really good underfoot. It's not a soft ground shoe. You don't have huge lugs. I'm gonna talk about that later on, of course, but with the softer ground, kind of enhances the connection, the flex, if you will, underfoot. Also softens up the kind of firmness of the foam itself. Feels really nice here. If you're on softer type of dirt, say maybe light mud conditions, not deep mud, this will probably be a really fun shoe for that. I'm gonna go ahead and head onto some trails now, zip a little bit of a downhill, and then I'll stop for a close-up on the upper, maybe a few thoughts on the way down before that. Glad I brought along this craft wind shell with me. I was thinking about not, but it actually it's not raining. Very light, but it's around 50 Fahrenheit here, so a little cool. I seem to have been protected earlier on the road, catching a bit of wind as I come over here. So this is cutting it pretty nicely here. I don't have huge confidence coming down this hill here in this shoe. It is mainly due to the fit though, which I'm about to do a close-up on. Just a lot of volume in this shoe for me. I don't think it's designed for technical or running very steep trails very fast. And certainly with this sizing and with this volume inside the shoe, mainly for me, it's not gonna serve that role for me. Here again, some softer yet not muddy trails here. Feeling perfect here. It does have a kind of wide fit. Not quite ultra topo keen level, but your foot is able to expand a little bit inside the shoe. And that is, I guess, part of the design. I wonder if they baked in a little extra space there. There is no insole in this shoe, which we'll take a quick look at. But the foot does feel, I would say, less restricted inside of the shoe, while feeling decently held. Again, as I mentioned, coming down that little steep part there, there's gonna be limits to the foothold here, unless you do have a high volume foot and you're fully filling up the inside of the shoe. Then you'll probably get more technical range out of these. I've got my typical US 10 here, put the sizing up on the screen. Lengthwise, they do feel correct. Not quite a full thumbs, but 3/4 here, going up from my true to size, I would say US 9.5 to my typical On 10. There's just a lot of volume in this upper. They have handy lace loops here. I will note that they seem to be maybe in a, I got these all tucked in here to get them out of the way of my stride pod. They put these right where the laces cross. I have to pull them out under the lace cross here. Seems like this should be a touch lower to make it more accessible. Not really a big deal, but you can see how much bunching I've got going on here. I've raced 108K in the On Cloud Ultra Pro in a similar US 10, so it's not an issue with me getting the wrong size here. This is definitely a higher volume fit here, and I think there's less room for adjustability, so I would caution right off the bat to size carefully. I would recommend true to size, and if you are, say, in between sizes as I am, I would go down a half a size and wear thinner socks. I'm wearing my Creepers Purple Haze socks here, and this is a sock I typically reserve for, of course, higher volume toe boxes, topos, ultras, keen, and just generally speaking higher volume toe boxes. And I'm not squeezed at all with this sock in this shoe in my typical On 10. You could see kind of the material here. It is a sock-like construction too, so there's no tongue, sock, booty, whatever you want to call it. As you peek inside there, you'll also note that there is no insole. I don't know if this is a fabricy layer bonded to a Strobel board or if there's a little bit of cushion to this layer itself, but there is no insole. One thing I was thinking about on the way out here was that I could perhaps stick a thin insole in here to help me with the volume and give me a better fit. That will probably be what I'll try next. It feels good as I lace them up. They have a dual kind of eyelet setup here, so you're not exactly going through because of the sock type upper. So it is kind of laced to what would normally be the second eyelet, but they're kind of like two holes here for each eyelet. Moving on to the interior here, you can see they do have some kind of white strips here along the edges. So that's the seam between the upper and the bond for the board or insole, built-in insole, whatever you want to call that. It's just to kind of smooth out those edges. So I don't notice any irritation anywhere inside the shoe. Heel padding is quite light. They have a full U-ring inside here, but I don't notice any heel slippage at all. Again, you've got two eyelets here as the upper eyelet. There's no like facility to do like a heel lock situation if you wanted to, but even with the shoe feeling quite high volume inside, I don't notice heel slippage at all, and that's just, I guess, due to the flexibility of the shoe. Take a look at the outsole just quickly. Did get a rock caught in there, so that is something, depending on what you're running on, that may get caught in between there. But coming back to the volume here, correct on length here, but I have a, I guess I would say medium volume foot, definitely not a high volume foot, and I find that it's quite roomy in here. And again, even with this thick sock, I can note my foot moving around here, and even still, as I've kind of, you could see it bunched up the inside over here a little bit, which is not an issue. This is not causing me any irritation. There's a big soft pad down the middle here, and this is just a generally soft knit material. Even as this is bunching up and kind of folding over, I don't have any pressure points anywhere over here. It looks a little, I guess, weird, you would say, but it's not a problem at all for me. As I was saying, even with that, I still feel like I'm moving around a little bit more than I'd like in this shoe. I would probably ideally want to go with a 9.5. I'm gonna lose some space in front of the toes here. Again, I think the sizing lengthwise is correct. This upper material, this is it. You could probably see my finger through there. There's nothing on the inside, so they kind of gave the extra space. Typically with a lot of uppers, it'll be thicker, like what you see on the outside. I had this sitting visually next to my Cloud Ultra Pro, and they visually look the same. But I think even the Cloud Ultra Pro, it has a normal tongue, which is quite well padded. And when the tongue sits down on top of the foot, these side panels come over the tongue. It does eat into the volume, and even other areas of the upper, just the inside of the material, it's just like a touch more volume inside of what you see here. So even though it visually kind of looks like a similar 10 to other On shoes that I have, there's just more space all on the inside of this shoe. But I would say it is interesting because I still have good heel lockdown. It still feels quite secure unless I'm going in steep or that kind of, say, technical terrain. And I do believe at TRE they did say this is kind of a training shoe, more for moderate stuff, not really designed for kind of like all-terrain running. So maybe at this sizing, I'm not sure I don't have a 9.5. I would have loved to have been able to try one on, but I think this is going to be comfortable for what the shoe is intended for me. I'll just have to wear like a nice creeper sock with it. Take a look underfoot here. You can see all the CloudTec Connect segments here. Look at the flex. Quite easy flex here. Not as much twisting as you would expect with all these grooves. I have some other shoes that twist probably easier than this shoe. Certainly the Brooks Glycerin Flex. That shoe you could pretty much like twist a full 180 there. You have good flex this way, but there is a little bit of tension in terms of twisting here, and they probably designed that in such a way to like not feel too loose underfoot on the trails. Again, not necessarily technical terrain, but I'm kind of like winding around here, there. This trail right here is probably like the perfect kind of trail. Softish ground, a little bit of like windy. I don't know if I'm gonna head up there today, but a little bit of windy, a little bit soft, and not so crazy rocky where I can't find places to put my footsteps. Again, inside the shoe, at least my foot is moving around a little bit. I don't feel super comfortable in that kind of uneven terrain. If you have a higher volume foot and you really fill out the shoe, it would probably feel really great. A little bit of bunching as I lace up here. Again, not a problem for me at all. I am really liking the feel of these underfoot too. Perhaps it also has something to do with the kind of built-in insole or whatever you want to call that. Really nice ground feel here. Again, as long as I don't put them too much on tilt, so to speak, as long as I can keep my feet under me, they feel really nice. Not much energy, I would say, underfoot from the Helion HF here, as it kind of feels when you press into it with your thumb. It's not overly firm, but enough to kind of absorb impact from the ground, but doesn't have that reactivity of some energetic flavors of this foam. They really didn't want to put a lot of action underfoot in this shoe. On is one of those brands that doesn't believe in the carbon fiber plated thing. Notably, the Cloud Ultra Pro has the nylon fiberglass plate, not carbon fiber. I believe in their studies they have talked about carbon fiber perhaps being too stiff and perhaps even detrimental in certain areas of trail running, like climbing and descending. So it doesn't surprise me that they went with a more dampening type of feel here with this formulation. Don't want you bouncing all over the place. Sergi, their main trail designer, lead trail, I'm not exactly sure. Don't quote me on that. I don't want to place him in a role that he's not in, but he was mentioning that they did do some studies, or at least had gotten a lot of feedback from athletes, that it perhaps was not the best idea to be running and certainly piling up trail training miles in super shoe type shoes. I believe the feedback he mentioned they had gotten from athletes is they wanted a shoe that was a little more versatile, again, a little bit more ground connection, perhaps even a shoe that would kind of work out the foot muscles, work out the leg muscles, certain aspects of training the smaller supporting musculature that kind of get put aside by the advancement with super shoes. Super shoes want to kind of take that work away from you and essentially do it for you. I mean, that's the whole idea. Craft Hypervent shell here, working out pretty nicely. Showers came and went and it totally dried up. It's a very smooth material, 100% recycled polyamide here. Again, not a rain shell, so it did get a little bit wet and soaked through as I was going, and it was coming down there. But now that it's stopped and I'm on the move, you can see completely dried up here. Craft has in their product description on the website a note that their fit tends to be long and lean. I'd probably consider myself long and lean, 5'10", about 140 pounds. I typically wear either a small or medium for jackets like this. Typically I'll go with a medium just to give me a little looseness around the torso. This one does seem to be especially kind of loose in a medium. Torso wise, I could probably go with a small, but I do have long arms, so arm length is pretty good here. So I don't know. Not quite sure about that long and lean aspect here. Maybe there's people leaner than me, but I do like to have kind of wind jackets in different sizes, depending on whether I'm going to wear them on their own, underneath the vest, or on top. So as you can see here, got my vest underneath here, got a bladder, a few things packed up, camera earlier. It is quite see-through, by the way. What do you feel about that? I do have a gray one too. Medium is a good fit here, at least at my torso size, and having a vest underneath. Don't feel restricted at all, which is what you want when you want to oversize over a vest. Just crossed 7 miles here. It's gonna be about 10 to 12 straight out the box here for the Cloudsoma. Feeling really good. No sense of discomfort or harshness anywhere with the feet or legs. Feeling overall nice and smooth ride. I did mention the word dampening earlier, and I think that's most applicable to the feel of foam underfoot. It doesn't feel firm, but also don't feel like a lot of energy return coming back. It's again, luckily with this weather here, softer ground here, adaptable underfoot, and softness is helping out with the density of the midsole foam. You're gonna feel the ground here. If it's overly hard, probably gonna feel that in this shoe, but if it's kind of mixed and varied, you're also gonna get nice smooth feel too, more so than that hard stuff. I've got the ground platform measured at 110, 78, 94. Just for comparison, Cloud Ultra Pro I've got at 118, 70, 92. A little bit more pulled in under the midfoot and wider at the forefoot with the Cloud Ultra Pro. Makes sense, I think. A little bit more forward leaning, faster running in the Cloud Ultra Pro, higher stack. They want to give you that more platform under the forefoot for stability. Then just narrow it out a bit, keep up the speed, save some weight, and less tension on the ground under the middle of the shoe with that one. Cloudsoma here, more of your standard type of ratio from forefoot to midfoot to heel width on the ground. Just generally medium width, nothing crazy underfoot. Just keep you generally stable. I did not get an official spec on the lugs. Tried to measure them out. I was getting between 2 and 3. Doesn't seem to be a uniform kind of variation between the inside and the outside. I was just trying to measure in different areas, and sometimes I felt like I would get 2.5. Sometimes it looked like 3. Sometimes it looked like 2. I think it may be just like the pods or something about the way they molded it or something. Very kind of slight variations, but I would, I guess, average it out to say 2.5 mil lug depth. Certainly capable, again, in most terrain outside of real mud. If you look at a shoe like the Mount to Coast H1, I believe that's 1.5 mil, and that shoe's performing quite well in legit trail races. So lug depth, not a consideration really here. It's enough. I didn't get into too much crazy rocks out here today. Certainly nothing like you saw in my TT review out in New Jersey. But I have not noticed anything really getting through the foot here. Under each of the segments there, you do have full rubber, aside from the flex gaps there. But they seem to kind of deflect stuff. I haven't noticed anything, even when I was running on kind of rounded stuff that I would expect to push through. Could be the case that flexibility of those segments kind of angles off or deflects the impact in such a way whereas it doesn't come or continue straight up into the bottom of the foot. I don't know, just a feeling. Feels decently protective for 3327, of course, with no plate or protective elements in the mix here. Got a new hat here from Fractal, M Chama. Might have seen me wearing the M Windswept in a lot of my videos. Something about the fabric of some of Fractal's caps. I need a taller crown, or at least a stretchier material. That Windswept is the one that seems to kind of get all my hair and head in there most comfortably and without it feeling like it's gonna come off my head This one feels kind of similar. I was looking around their catalog and trying to like really zoom in on which materials were similar to that windswept cap, and this was one of them. So this one also fits pretty good. So they send me a lot of caps, but a lot of them, they just have different material on the panels, and some of it is not as stretchy, and they're just like borderline too like tight in terms of height, crown height. So Chama here, this one's gonna work for me. See me rotating this one in. I like the logo in front too. I don't like sometimes just a big lettering in front, but throw a little picture of a mountain on there. Always works. Thank you for tuning in once again to Humble Running. First run today in this shoe. I want to get some more miles in this one. I think it's going to be a fun shoe to throw into some comparisons. Maybe I'll play around with a little insole volume variation here. Give me a better fit, see how far I could push them. Of course, let me know what questions you have or comparisons you would like to see. It's a good looking shoe, by the way. Saw some other colorways on the website. Certainly gonna double as a casual use shoe for sure, as long as you're not into showing off your Cloud Pods, because they're not here. Something new and different from On, at least. Maybe something for those of you that didn't fully believe in the CloudTec Pods, thought it was a little gimmicky. This is one for you. How about that? Catching a minor break with the rain here. Want to do a quick comparison at the end. I got soaked at the end, had to wait a bit. Both of these are a US 10. Hope this comes across with the camera here, but I think visually speaking, this even looks like the bigger shoe. Again, I've raced this River of No Return, 108K, US 10. Sizing is right for me for longer distances. This shoe to me visually looks bigger than the Cloudsoma here, but inside of the shoe there's just more space. Again, you've got a regular insole here that probably takes up some space. You have a kind of hybrid strobo-less setup here, stitching along the side, but nothing in the middle here with the Cloud Ultra Pro. But again, this one here, this is sewn in. It's not just glued down or anything like that. This is all put together inside here, so you cannot take this out. It is designed this way. So I would assume that this is taking up a little more volume with a standard insole. Also, I talked about with the tongue, quite well padded here in the Cloud Ultra Pro. But again, that's a lot of extra material in there wrapping around the foot. Then you have the upper going over the top, so it just kind of fits me really well again in a US 10, and it just eats up a little bit more volume inside the shoe. With this sock type setup here, there's nothing really overlapping, so your foot is just in there. You're just going to have bunching if you don't fully fill up that space, and that's one of the reasons I brought out. I've got this Norda insole. They have a race insole, and this is the regular insole with the little lip. I was thinking maybe down the road this insole, or see how I have to checking right now. It fits pretty good in there. So this is a setup I might try in this shoe because it is a little bit more volume for me than my typical On US 10. I have my good day for it. Wet grass here. Cloud Surfer Trail, waterproof. These are also in the US 10. Again, not even a full thumbs width here, and much more tighter fit, much lesser volume in this shoe compared to the Cloudsoma here. So I wanted to get this video out there pretty quickly, relatively quickly, as a first run look, particularly about that sizing aspect there. Again, an insole, this one specifically, or something like this where it's thin, low profile, and not a difference. Some of these insoles can have a little bit more thickness in the heel, and that can throw off the geometry a bit. This is a good one that I've kind of put in other shoes at times because it is flat. You don't have any difference when you put this in. You're not jacking up the heel, which you wouldn't want to do. Got the Glycerin Flex here. Again, this is another US 10. Kind of look at them. They look visually similar, but again, thickness of the upper material here, it's a little bit thicker. You have this memory foam insole here, which I don't like, by the way. Also, you have a standard
tongue setup here. So again, with that overlap, you're pulling in a lot of the volume inside the shoe. 10 here fits me better, less roomy than the Cloudsoma here, of course. Check out the flex grooves. Put these side by sides. Something I talked about on the run. This one, you have this huge thing here. This one specifically makes the shoe like way looser. And even up front here, they did a little connection point here to try to mitigate some of that here. I wonder if this was like kind of an add-on to the design at some point. But in any case, way looser feel. Again, this is a road shoe, so you're dealing with different terrain or, you know, road, so to speak, underfoot. But one thing that I do find with this shoe is it just flexes this way a little bit much. Again, I have another video coming up where I test this shoe a little bit on dirt. I find that those edges kind of are a little too loose. They kind of curl up or like contour up on the sides of my foot, which is okay-ish on the road, although I am trying to swap out this insole because I don't like the foam itself. The memory foam, Ortholite / memory foam type insole here, in conjunction with this curling up, kind of like bothers my big toe. So that's something I do want to swap out, but again, way looser here. If we look at the Cloudsoma here, similar setup, but even front to back, it takes more force to flex it. This one really just, it feels like nothing. Way looser. This one more tension and also twisting. It doesn't twist as easily as you may, maybe you wouldn't expect, but with all these grooves cut in there, see the orientation of this one. I should probably look at the same shoes. They're like completely different setups here. This one has like a wave going through it here. This one cuts completely across here, and then you know, this one angles out towards this way, towards the lateral side, and this one angles in. So it's just, I guess this is just designed to fully flex, where this one is designed to flex but kind of stay under control, not feel too loose underfoot. And this is definitely a better setup for trails. I, again, tested this out on the trails and it felt okay, but it felt like a little, the foot is like really moving a lot here, which is, I guess, what they're going for. But you want to make a usable trail shoe with the Cloudsoma here from On. So again, more to come on this one. First run today, wanted to cover some key points, especially around the fit and the flex of this one here. So stay tuned to the channel, www.humblerunning.com. Maybe I'll do some newsletter content on this one and let you know when I do a more fuller review and potentially comparisons to other models. Thank you for watching.